Can you think of a time where seeing someone else do something has motivated you or inspired you to do it too and made you believe like, oh, I can too?
They took it very seriously and they took themselves very seriously. So that kind of made me think, I want to be serious like they're serious, do you know what I mean? And we're the same age. And that's quite, you know, when you look at, again, it's like you look around at kind of who's around you and you think, you see people doing things.
I think the title is something like, how do you improve a skill when your life depends on it?
Yes.
If you fail? Because you can't go and practice in stormy weather because if you fail, you die, right?
So there was a study done on a basketball coach, I think it was John Wooden, and he was a UCLA basketball coach. And they found, they were studying his teaching, out of his communication, 6.9% were compliments, 6.6% were expressions of displeasure, 75% was pure information.
What's the power of these pages?
There's a lot, man, there's a lot of gems in here.
Welcome to The Power of Pages, where we review books that ignite your mind,
elevate your life,
and drive your ambition. And this episode, we are reviewing The Talent Code. And this was picked by yourself. Well, first, I go by Ty.
I'm Mr. Fly.
And you decided to pick this book.
Yeah.
Let's just start off with that. Why did you pick The Talent Code?
You know, I didn't really know what the book was about. I think I heard it referenced on a podcast I was listening to. I don't remember which one it was, but they spoke about something in the book. And I thought, okay, I like the name. And yeah, talent is something, you know, it's an interesting topic. So yeah, I just bought it.
Yeah,
basically.
Okay, yeah, okay.
And then when we were, obviously, you know, as we're looking through books to review, I was going through my books and I forgot that I bought it.
Yeah.
So then I thought, yeah, let's read it.
Yeah, okay. First impressions, first thoughts.
I didn't know I kind of thought the book would be kind of like in the same sort of vein as, I know they do reference outliers in it and the 10,000 hour rule and whatnot that we'll speak about, I'm sure. But I kind of thought it'd be in the same vein as that, like talking about, I don't know, just talking about individual characters or individuals more so as in like athletes or people that have been successful. I attributed it towards sports more so than other things, which they kind of go into both more like coaching and whatnot. But yeah, it was, I mean, my first impressions were good. I liked the first chapter, it was quite interesting. What was your impressions?
Yeah, my first impressions were good. My overall feeling of the book was, yeah, I liked the topic, the talent code. And I guess we'll dive into the talent code because I guess the simple question is talent natured or nurtured? Like, you know, is it something that we can learn or is it something that we're naturally born with? Yeah. And I think this book breaks it down to kind of say, well, actually you can learn anything. Yeah. In the right environments and the right circumstances. Mm-hmm. And I guess let's touch on the start because it talks about myelin. Myelin, which for those that don't know is, if I actually learned about this in college, but
did you?
Yeah, in my sports I think it was PE A level, and they actually described it as the myelin sheath. Mm-hmm. So I didn't actually look it up after, but the fact that he shortened it down to myelin as in the myelin sheath, but essentially it's a sheath that goes over the brain waves to help speed up communication and lay new neural pathways to help you learn new things. Yeah. And I guess the beginning for me is just basically about explaining what myelin is. Yeah. No, he talks about,
even because I think that's the second chapter where he talks more about the myelin, but talk about that sort of nature or nurture. I think they talk about the air pilots, the air cadets. Yes. And then basically the test they used to do to find out if someone they thought good pilots were born and not made. So they would do a test where it was like, you go up in the air and you do like 3 loops.
Yes.
Like that. And if you didn't get dizzy, it means you're just a natural born pilot. Lo and behold, a lot of the pilots were crashing their planes and dying and whatnot. So they eventually realized that wasn't maybe a good test to do. So there was a person, the name was Link, he was the Link trainer.
Yeah.
Basically something quite crude, but obviously it worked where they would just practice flying the plane in like a bath or something small where they just practice, like a simulation essentially. Yeah. This was in 1934, I think, so it was quite a long time ago. But and that just allowed them to, because he refers to myelin as like natural broadband. So, you know, practice, repetition, building layers and layers. So that's kind of, where he speaks about that. And that's kind of how you improve a skill. The first time you do it, the second time. So they would get so much, they would practice so much. So by the time they got to the air and they were flying, you know, they've done this before. They simulated it so many times before. So
let's touch on that a bit because you know, pilots kept crashing.
Yeah.
This was the problem. Pilots kept crashing in stormy weather. So he created a system of learning, but in safe conditions.
Yes.
So it's how do you improve a skill that, I think the title is something like, how do you improve a skill when your life depends on it if you fail? Because you can't go and practice in stormy weather because if you fail, you die, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do you practice a skill that takes you out of that dangerous situation?
Yeah.
So he created the Link simulator, which helped the pilots to learn safely.
Link Chaplin was his name.
Link
Chaplin.
Okay. But actually it took the pilots or the pilot organizations to take this on board. It took them ages to take it on board. But eventually he got it, and it was used to help 500,000 pilots learn and prevent them from making errors. And the pilot industry improved, the safety improved because of his simulator, which was just a good example of you don't have to be in the actual situation for you to learn the skill of that situation. You can practice other ways. I found that really quite interesting and a good reminder because we talk about, me and you, we talk about different sports, but for example, we're both good boxing fans. And sparring, which is the practice that you do, is different to an actual boxing match. But it's the closest simulator, which, I liked that.
No, what I liked about that mainly was it kind of goes away from that narrative of like, well, you're born, so it's like, you know, like you can't, that's who you are, you can't do nothing, you're either born a good pilot or you're not.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there's people that if they took them up into the air and did a loop 3 times, they would have got dizzy. However, put them through links, the training simulation, and they would end up being maybe some of the best pilots there because they're being able to make mistakes, to learn, to improve, you know, talking about the myelin, build up their myelin and build up their resources or whatnot. So, no, I like that, and I agree with that. I think you can, given enough time, you know, the way the brain works, you know, the things like neuroplasticity and things like that, you can actually learn a skill. It takes people different times, but so I agree with that. And it was a good starting point for me because it kind of showed that, okay, you're not just putting people in a box. You know, I know further on in the book he kind of mentions that you kind of look at skill or talent as like, oh, this person's just blessed and they just were, you know, look at like, you know, whatever football you want to think of, they were just given that. But there's a lot of contributing factors to these players you see, using football as an example or using pilots as an example as well.
There was a football example he gave that I liked, and I guess we'll ask the audience, why are Brazilian footballers so good? And I really like this because we go to that same example of practicing something outside of the real environment. So he talks about Brazilians practicing futsal, which is like a bit faster than, you know, 11-a-side football. The ball's a bit smaller, so you have to have more technical skills. You play it in a smaller area, so you're closer to your opponent's opposition, so you have to be able to control and maneuver the ball much better. Practice in that environment and then go and play it in a football match environment, then like you're taking those skills into that. And he actually created a school around this technique. I think it was in Leeds.
Yeah, Leeds, yeah. Simon Clifford was his name.
Simon Clifford. Yeah. So he created a school around it in Leeds, and they kind of laughed at him, I think, initially. And he trained up these players.
But he went to Brazil first.
Yes.
He went to Brazil, he found futsal.
Yeah.
And then he kind of came back with futsal and then.
Yeah, okay, thanks for adding that. Anyway, he created this team and they ended up beating the Scottish and Irish national team.
Crazy.
Which that's, you know, that's crazy, right? He's just taken this concept and helped train them. And actually, for those that know Micah Richards, he was a protege of this school. He came out of it and he was actually, quite a good player until I think he suffered a lot of injuries and
He was a very good
But
player.
and he actually even got called up for the England team. Yeah, he played.
McCulloch is a good player, man.
Yeah,
He's a good player. A lot of injuries and whatnot. But what was interesting, because obviously, see, where I've done football coaching and whatnot, and I've got a lot of friends that are like coaches, and the futsal kind of just came. But he says here it was 1997 when he travelled to Brazil. I'm not sure, but I know futsal just all of a sudden, and I think it would have been off the work after Leeds and stuff, where everyone starts adopting it, because you see it and it's like, okay, what are they doing? And everyone wants to know what everyone else is doing, and it's producing these good results. And even now, a lot of like my nephew, he plays futsal. He used to when he was younger, so I think they do it a lot when you're younger, to kind of get those fundamentals. Like you said, the pitch is smaller, the ball's heavier, all that kind of stuff. So it's again shows that we would just think, oh, Brazilians, everyone just thinks Brazilians are just naturally blessed and naturally good at football. And maybe there's some truth in that, but also there's also another reason, because they play futsal, which gives them those fundamentals, the basics, playing in a smaller. So you have to be more creative and more inventive, X, Y, Z. So and that's influenced football coaching a lot, because now they do a lot of smaller sided games, X, Y, Z, all off the back of this Simon Clifford.
Yeah.
So again, the nature versus nurture thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
There were a few studies in the book, and I love a good study. But were there any studies that you liked?
Yeah. I mean, we can jump around.
Yeah, let's jump around.
Yeah. So was it Rachel Dweck? Carol Dweck. I always forget her name. Were you thinking the same one?
That's one of the studies, but Carol Dweck.
So they did a study. Try and find it, but regarding. Correct me or fill in the gaps if I make mistakes on this, but they were looking at children that play music. No, not music. They were looking at children, and it was an experiment based around puzzles.
Yeah,
and there was different levels to the puzzles. So they would both do a test, and one half of the group were praised on how smart and intelligent they were, and the other half were told, were complimented on how hard they tried and how hard they worked.
Yeah.
And then later on through the study, the group that was complimented on how intelligent they were and how smart, they were reluctant to do harder tests.
Yeah.
And the ones that were told how much they tried and praised for their efforts were kind of more willing to take harder tests, and they kind of performed better towards the end.
Yeah.
And it kind of just shows that when they were, I think one of the findings were that when they were praised for their intelligence, if they failed, they took it as like a slight on themselves. Yeah. Sort of thing. And
they took it as confirmation that they weren't smart.
Yeah, exactly.
Anymore.
But I see you've got something to say.
Yeah, no, because let's get out the exact data behind it, because
What chapter was that?
Chapter 6, I think. Okay, the end of chapter 6. Chapter 6. So the key words that they said were, you must be smart at this. Yeah. So like praising them for their intelligence, or the other key word was, you must have worked really hard. Mm-hmm. So they're the two differences: praising for effort and praising for intelligence. And 90%. So the kids were then tested again, and offered a choice between a harder test and an easier test. 90% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. The kids who were praised for their intelligence chose the easier test, which was quite interesting. The third test was much harder. So they did another test which was much harder. But the effort group, the kid who were praised for effort, they dug in and grew involved with the test, trying solutions, testing strategies, and they later said that they liked it because they were praised for effort. However, the kids that were praised for intelligent, they hated the harder test. They took it as proof that they weren't smart. And then the final test was, they returned to a test similar difficulty to the first original test. The praised for effort group, they increased by 30%. Yep. The praised for intelligent group decreased by 20%. Yep. And Carol Dweck, she ran the study 5 more times to prove that it wasn't a fluke, and got the same results every time. And she's a well-renowned psychologist, I believe is the correct term. She actually coined the term growth mindset and fixed mindset. And it's just interesting in terms of motivation and talent. We look at, children who are praised for effort, like, oh, you tried really hard in your football match, for example. I don't know why we're sticking on football, but you know, they might try harder to be better at football.
Yeah.
Whereas, you know, a child who's told, oh, you're just really good at it, they might just assume they're good and, you know, not try and learn and get better. So, yeah, nurture can help with our talent.
I think it's really important. Obviously, this highlights like, the words you use or when you talk to children, like how important it is on their effort level, because it doesn't really. The effort's the kind of one tangible, because if you've got, you know, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard, you know, all these cliches, but they come from somewhere. So it's like, I think there it shows that the fact they redid the test so many times, it wasn't a fluke, it wasn't a one-off group. But again, yeah, it's very, especially with coaching, you know, if you've got a team and they just think they're, you know, they're good, they're too good, again, using football as an example, last one I'm going to use. But it's like, if you've got a team where there's a sort of arrogance or they feel like we're so good at X, Y, Z, and they lose, they're going to take it as a slight on themselves about their own personal ability. But if it's like, well, you know, whoever tries hardest, and it's like, okay, you know what, the other team tried harder than us, hence why they won. So now we need to try our best in the next game. And then if you don't win, you tried your best, there's nothing less you can do, as opposed to like, oh, well, I'm just not good enough.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So yeah, no, interesting. What studies did you?
There was a few, and I'm going to jump around because ignition and motivation, like how do you ignite motivation among like a community or people in general to become amazing at a particular skill? And there were a few studies in this, but I want to start by looking at why some children progress quickly at music lessons and other children don't. And Gary McPherson conducted a long-term study of 157 randomly selected children to see, you know, who would learn at their music lessons better. And I believe it was a clarinet they were learning. And the results, after 9 months, there was mixture of abilities. And he analysed the data and found the difference between the children wasn't because of IQ, wasn't because of math skills, sense of rhythm, oral sensitivity, or income. It was because of one question they were asked prior to learning the clarinet. And I found this incredible. So each child was asked prior to learning the clarinet how long they planned to play the instrument for. So yeah, every child, how long do you think you're going to play this for? So the options were throughout this year, through the whole primary school, through high school as well, or all my life. And the answers were condensed to short-term commitment, medium-term commitment, and long-term commitment. And the results were then measured. They were then measured on how much they practice. So how much does each child practice? 20 minutes, low levels of practice a week. 45 minutes, medium levels of practice a week. 90 minutes, high levels of practice a week. And the results showed those who had plans of long-term commitment were significantly better than all the other groups. And to go one step further, those with a long-term commitment who practiced 20 minutes a week had outperformed those with a short-term commitment who practiced 90 minutes a week, which was, I thought, wow, how can someone practice 90 minutes a week versus someone who practiced 20 minutes a week? Surely you'd think the 90 minutes is going to be better.
Wow.
But because they had a long-term commitment, actually I'm going to stick to this, even with 20 minutes a week, they perform better.
But it's also, you know, deep practice versus...
Just being there.
Just being there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because, I mean, to talk about deep practice, we spoke about before, but it's essentially that's really immersing yourself in something. You know, you could sit down with a book and say, yeah, I'm revising, and you're not really revising. You could be there for 2 hours. Yeah, I spent 2 hours in the library, but how long were you on your phone? Were you talking to someone? Was you just, you know, how long were you actually revising?
Yeah.
Versus I was in there for 45 minutes, but for every single minute of that 45 minutes, I was revising. So if you're thinking about in this situation here, the ones that are thinking of their future or their life, or they're visualizing how they want to live in the future, they're going to spend that, was it 20 minutes you said?
Yeah,
20 minutes, they're working, they're rehearsing 20 minutes consistently.
Yeah.
Because they're immersed in it versus 90 minutes, you know, what are they really doing? They don't really see, they're not really invested in the long term. So that makes a lot of sense to me. And as well, the level, you know, how are you kind of staying in your comfort zone when you're practicing for that 90 minutes? Are you just rehearsing what you already know, or are you trying to learn new things and kind of break new barriers and whatnot? So that makes sense.
That comes on to, I mean, maybe I want to stay on this chapter for a minute.
What chapter is that?
Chapter 5, primal cues. But we'll touch on it later. But about the teaching, you know, how they have great teachers create and help nurture great talents. But yeah, we'll touch on that later. The other thing I liked about the ignition and the motivation was how, like, maybe countries who you would think wouldn't necessarily take part in a sport or be great at a sport, how they had become really great at certain sports. So the first one I want to touch on is in South Korean women playing golf. So one South Korean woman won the golf tour in 1998, the LGPA tour. I don't know much about golf, but I'm assuming it's a big tour, it's a big thing in golf, right? This was in 1998. This inspired many, and by 2007, there were 33 South Koreans on that LGPA tour. It's like, because that one South Korean inspired a nation, there was more golfers. And I guess when we look at the UK, I actually think, again, to bore the viewers on boxing, but I just think about Anthony Joshua. Like, he's inspired.
They call it hotbeds.
Yeah, hotbeds.
That's how you refer to it. So like a breakthrough where one person will just kind of come through and then it inspires or just motivates. That's why representation is so important, though. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like, well, let's use South Korea, right? The South Korean lady as an example. That has just made other South Korean girls, young girls at the time, so you're looking up and thinking, oh, I can do that, I want to do that. I want to be that person. You know, same thing with boxing. There's so many examples. You know, with tennis, like Serena Williams, Venus Williams, whatnot. So things like that, it's really like, you can't downplay. It's not really brought up in this book. It's not referred to it as that representation in the book. But for me, that's what I saw. I said, you know what? That's why it's so important, you know, to see people that you can relate to in positions and succeeding in, and like, whether it's sport or whatever it might be, politics, like work and professional living and whatnot. So it's important.
I actually have a question off the back of this, and maybe you might need to a moment to think about it. But can you think of a time where seeing someone else do something has motivated you or inspired you to do it too, and made you believe, like, oh, I can too?
you know, I'm laughing here because I remember, like, at the time, obviously, we spoke about AJ or Andy Joshua already. Watching the final, because you know, you look at it. For me at the time, I was like, Rod, he's just this is what I was like. He's just a London guy, like black London guy, Nigerian obviously as well. So I was like, Rod, like, he just won the gold medal in the Olympics boxing. It's crazy. Do you know what I mean? So I think that I definitely got swept into that wave of boxing. Like, I have to say, that's the most, like, kind of. There's
the
others,
initial one that springs to mind.
That's the one that comes to mind. What about you?
I was thinking more on a closer level, rather than necessarily, for me anyway, rather than necessarily a celebrity, because I got swept under the Anthony Joshua wave as well. You know, I took up boxing and I got interested in it because of him, for sure. But I was thinking more on a individual level when I think about video editing. We have both a good friend birthday the other day. Big up Cam King. He taught himself to video edit, and I remember him telling me and like showing me his video edits, and I was like, wow, this is sick. Like, what, you taught yourself? Like, that's crazy. And then I thought, well, I could teach myself then. He taught himself. Why can't I teach myself? So then, of course, I learned the skill of video editing, and that definitely inspired me to learn video editing and use it for my business. Because before, when I was thinking about marketing content, I was like, oh, I need a video editor. Like, the thought of learning it wasn't even really a thought. It was like, I actually need someone. It's a highly skilled job, and it is a highly skilled job, but it is possible to learn. Like most things, like, even if they're highly skilled with the right practice.
Build up the myelin and whatnot. I think now you're making me think on a deeper level. I think two guys that I know, More is the name. It's that they make suits. Senna and Joshua, that I met on holiday years ago. This was years ago, long time. But we were younger, and obviously they're black boys from London, like us black guys, and they were making suits. And I was like, what? Suits? You know, like no one really wore suits. So that was like, but then seeing how they operate and, you know, a few conversations, like I said, Joshua made my suit that I wore when I got married. So they're still in the game and they're smashing it. But seeing them, the way they operated was like, they moved on a different level. And for me, I was like, right, okay. It kind of made me realize that they took it very seriously and they took themselves very seriously. So that kind of made me think, I want to be serious like they're serious, do you know what I mean? And we're the same age. And that's quite, you know, when you look at, again, it's like you look around at kind of who's around you and you think, you see people doing things. And again, you know, they're from South, I'm from West, but we just met on a group holiday, became friends sort of thing. And then I saw, you know, Instagram and all that, Facebook, and I kind of saw what they was doing with the suits and how they were going. And I was like, this is crazy. I know Joshua still does it. Senna does something different now, but you know, so that was like, on that level, like, where I could see face to face, that was definitely something which made me kind of be like, all right, I need to actually level myself up a bit.
Yeah.
There's people like me that are operating on a higher level. Do you see what I mean? So that was definitely, so yeah, that's more of like a closer to home.
Yeah. So that goes on to the topic, of ignition and motivation. Like, how can we ignite that within our community, within our friends, within ourselves to learn a new skill? Like, one thing for me, like, I'm fascinated with people that can speak another language, you know, very boring British, born and raised in London, can only speak English. I like to think I can speak a little bit of French, but I really can't. So in my head, I actually want to learn another language, but I don't have that ignition or motivation at the moment to dedicate myself to it. So I'm just looking at things, you know, at what point am I going to ignite that, and where am I going to get that ignition from? Maybe it might be a holiday to Spain, or it's funny, you know, I went to Morocco recently, and when I was walking around the town, people were speaking to me in Arabic. They thought I was Moroccan, and I was, you know, oh, sorry, you know, I can't speak Moroccan. Then they speak to me in French. I'm like, oh no, you know, I could only speak the basics of French. And it just made me think, while I was there, I was like, I want to learn Arabic. But, you know, once I'm back, I'm like, oh, back to life, back to living. So
man,
anyway.
it's the individual thing.
Yeah, no, 100%.
Yeah, what you want to, I think everyone has their own reason behind it, you know. It's like, if you use the children playing the clarinet, there's a reason they want to do it, because you have to be committed to these things and you have to be willing to practice, to do that deep practice. Yeah. You're gonna have to sacrifice things along the line. So are you willing to be committed enough to kind of try and achieve that? Obviously at the moment, the answer is no. yeah,
at the moment the answer is no for sure.
Language, but yeah.
Yeah, what I liked about this book also, there's some more studies as well that I want to discuss, but was this, how simple you could make this. It's kind of like, if you practice, you build new brain waves in your brain, it gets stronger, the connection gets stronger. The more you practice, the better you become. The more you push yourself outside of that practice, you fail, you learn from the failure, you keep going. Basically, if you want to get good at something, just practice it continuously and improve step by step. That for me was like, not the essence of the book, but the simplicity of the book. But it's simple though, isn't it? It is simple, like, but we overcomplicate it. Yes. Like, oh, I want to learn whatever, but I need to get a tutor, or I just start somewhere, right? But that's why, like, talking about how to ignite a hotbed and whatnot, was it the school KIP? What it stands for. KIP school, but they had their own culture. So this was two teachers, and they basically created a school in America. I forget what year it was, I haven't got it written down. 1993. Mark Feinberg and Dave Levin. Do you remember what chapter it was? Knowledge is Power program, and it's chapter 7. And that was, their plan was to get every child from their school into college. Yeah. And these are children or young people from backgrounds that wouldn't naturally normally go to college in America. So they did it a certain way where they had their standards,
And then as well, they learned around, and they looked around and they took what they think was good from the public school system and what they thought was good from the private school system and X, Y, Z. And they were very, very meticulous on even to how like the children or the students held their books.
Yeah.
Or how they, they had to earn things.
How they went to the toilet. I think they taught them everything. I think there was a sentence in there. I didn't actually write it down, but there was like, when they go to the toilet, like, use 4 sheets of paper or something like that. Okay. So it was very meticulous. Yeah. But just to add quickly, when you go to that school, you're instantly told you're going to college. Yeah. The purpose of you coming to this school is to go to college. So they're starting school with in their mind, right, the aim of this is everything I'm doing is to go to college.
And that lines up with those that saw themselves on with the books, with the cello, seeing themselves playing forwards.
Yeah.
So it's that future planning.
Yeah, exactly. So sorry, carry on. With
that, I mean, it just goes around the culture. And again, I mean, sports teams are easy to use this as an example because you create a culture within a team of how things are done. But within the school, they created their culture and it was work hard and be nice. Everything has to be earned. And then they've got their, 1, you belong to a group. 2, your group is together in a strange and dangerous world, so we need each other. So there's that, we're working together. And then also the mountain, we're climbing up a mountain, and the top of that mountain is college. You see what I mean? So that was like, that's a way that you kind of ignite that, but people have to buy into it. Mm-hmm. Initially, I guess it's the parents that would buy into it, hence why they send their children to that school. But then going forward, then the children would then buy into that secondly. And that's kind of, that's how you kind of develop a skill, and that's what I think. All of this, the book rarely spoke about like natural talent.
Yeah.
There's minimal reference to like natural talent, and even there are some individuals in the books, like whether it's tennis players or pop stars or American football players or football, soccer players, but they're not referred to for the natural talent they had. Someone like us, using Micah Richards, you would just think that, oh, he's just a great footballer, but he came through that system of futsal and X, Y, Z, so he came through a system. So the team he played for, there's a reason why he got where he was. It wasn't just he was just woke up and he just blessed with, oh, you're good at football, you're right back, there you go. There's more to it.
Yeah.
And again, with the hotbeds that we spoke about already, so there's so much, man. Even like the languages that they use, and there was like
the vocabulary
and stuff like that, man. But I think in order to ignite a hotbed, definitely you need to create a culture. Whether it's a football team, a boxing club, a working force, a family, or whatever, you develop that culture that everyone buys into, and then everyone kind of pushes in the same direction.
Yeah. And the KIP program was able to do that, and the stat was 90% of those children ended up going to college. Yeah. Many of them being the first in their families to do so. So, and I believe they then got it franchised or something, and it started. They were doing it at different parts across the country, and it became a much bigger thing. But they revolutionized the school system in that way.
Before this, but I'm sorry to be. But what was your thoughts on talent before you read the book?
My thoughts. What were my thoughts on talent? Like, I believe that you have to work hard. That's my thoughts. Mm-hmm. But I think in the right environment, I was actually thinking about this while reading the book as well, because I was thinking Usain Bolt, for example, the fastest man in the world. Well, not anymore, but if he wasn't born in Jamaica and he was born in Czech Republic, would he still have ended up being the fastest man in the world? And I don't think so, because it doesn't. This isn't even in the book, but Jamaican culture, they take pride in the Olympics. Like the 100 meters is a big thing in the whole school system.
It's a hotbed.
Yeah, it's a hotbed. It's a big thing in it. So yes, he has the tall, long limbs. Yes, he has the physical ability to be the fastest, but he also needed all of those other elements. So I think there are some elements to, being naturally gifted, like with different heights, for example, you'd in theory be better at basketball than me, in theory. If we both went through the same training program in the same environment. But at the same time, if I went through a training program and you didn't,
so
I'd be better.
With talent, do you think talent's the main deciding factor?
No. I think the main deciding factor is the environment and the practicing and the learning and the coaching. I think there's so many elements to it. Yeah, I think when we see a young person and they maybe pick up something and they're like, maybe they saw something on TV and they start playing the piano and they seem to pick it up and you're like, oh wow, you're naturally good at piano. Now, because everyone around them saying, oh, okay, this seems like your thing, that can encourage them to now actually be really good. But it's because now they're practicing more. So yeah, I think environment plays a big part. Yeah, environment plays a massive part.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Just moving on from that, like part of the environment is obviously the coaching. We haven't really spoke about it. We do need to speak about it a little bit before we wrap up. But they talk about like master coach. There's a lot, man. There's a lot. There's the one about the American. I don't know. There's a lot. There's the American football one right at the end.
Yeah, right at the end.
Then there's also the one, the coach from Denmark, where I think this is what I liked. Yeah, this is what I liked was talking about. We kind of have this idea of coaches. Let me think of like a football example, like Jose Mourinho, very big, very kind of gregarious, loud, and we kind of think of like people kind of think you might have to live up to that sort of example to be a good coach, but then it's actually the opposite. Yeah. Coaches are very observant, think a lot and say little, but what they do say kind of has a direct impact because their communication skills are that good, or they understand what they need to say to this player versus that player, X, Y, Z. So that was, I think that's, and again, talking about that environment, using like Usain Bolt, I'm sure his coaches along the way, there was a relationship and they understood. So if he was, the level in Jamaica of coaching for Olympics is mostly a lot higher for sprint running, is a lot higher there than maybe is across the world. Yeah. So then he's got the right coaches, the right environment. But I think coaching is a really, really important part.
Yeah, and I think you touched on it there. One of the key things of what they called the talent whisperers was some of the coaches, they didn't actually say much. No. They gave clear, concise and simple cues to students or to whoever to help them learn. And they didn't necessarily need to, shout every order at them. It was, clear, concise and simple cues.
Just going on from that, just to follow on from that, there was a good, there was a study done on a basketball coach, I think his name was John Wooden, and he was a UCLA basketball coach. And they found, they were studying his teaching, out of his communication, 6.9% were compliments, 6.6% were expressions of displeasure, 75% was pure information. So when he's talking to his players, it's pure information. It's whatever, it's just do this. Yeah. Stop doing that. Yeah. Don't do that. And when you look at top coaches, there's not, everyone, you don't have to be this loud, doing whatever. It's just, you choose your words carefully and you get that information to the player, and then the player takes it on and whatnot. So that was 75%, and there was 2,326 discrete acts of teaching is how they kind of refer to it.
That's you don't have to overcomplicate things.
No, it's not complicated.
And I like the story of the cello teacher because he was teaching students to play the cello, and he would just give simple cues. He's like, no, when you get to this part, feel the rhythm. Just something like that. Yeah. So then when they got to, yes, and then he's like, yes, okay, that's it. Okay, now, then he's giving them an additional, improvement. Now you felt the rhythm. Yeah. Now feel the vibe. I can't remember the exact term, but it was just simple cues, and I
really appreciate that sort of teaching and coaching. It's funny because obviously,
well, the data speaks. It's effective. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I think it's not commonly known. No. I think people when they're trying to show how good they are a coach or a teacher or a personal trainer or something like that, sometimes they think it's good to overcomplicate it. But the best trainers that I've seen and the best coaches that I've seen are the ones that simplify everything. Do you know what I mean? There's no, especially depending on the situation, but if you're training someone like a personal trainer and you've got someone that's just trying to stay fit, or just taking up boxing because they just want to learn, they just want to move around and learn a new skill. You just don't need to give them everything. You just need to give them the exact information at that point. And I think that's kind of like a lost art, man. Especially now, things are so analytical and data driven and all this kind of stuff, maybe on a higher level, but You know, if you look at talking about kind of quiet individuals, like obviously the Euros were recently, Gareth Southgate is a very, you know, before England have gone for like these big managers that are, you know, Capello and all these big sort of personalities, Southgate's the total opposite of that, and obviously he's performed better than them. So it's just interesting when I look at because for me, people kind of think, all right, if I want to be this kind of person, I have to play this character, and you don't necessarily need to do that. And I think, you know, this is a perfect example, and there's other examples that you can find.
What's the power of these pages?
There's a lot, man. There's a lot of gems in here. Do you have one?
For me,
let me think. You said
okay.
Think about it.
The power of the pages for me is just practice. You know, if you really want to get good at something, dedicate the time and practice, and not just practice the same thing. You know, push yourself each time. So for me, the power of the page is, if you can learn anything. That's it's encouragement and motivation. You can learn anything if you just practice. Our brains are wired that way to develop new
plasticity.
So that's the power for me.
I think for me, two things if I can. One, representation, like we already said.
Yeah.
But also communication and the correct level of communication and style of communication, and more so from the coaching. So just how you can get the message across and get the best out of the people you're trying to work with, or whether it's a player, like one of the coaches, Tom Brady's original coach, like Tom Brady, American football player, historic. He still goes back to his original coach when he was because there's something there. So that level of communication is so important. The example, the study that Carol Dweck did about motivation versus praise for intelligence. It has a knock-on effect.
Yeah. And
I know for me, definitely, even I was speaking to some young people this last week, and I made a point in my mind of like of kind of trying to challenge them to try harder.
Yeah.
You know, forget about your natural ability, try harder. Do you know what I mean? So I think that's for me. That's definitely something I'm going to take away from this.
Yeah, for sure. Praise effort, not
like intelligence or natural ability.
Yeah.
You got no. That's the one thing you don't have control over. Again, hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard.
Yeah.
If me and you are both got the same talent level and you work harder than me, you're gonna get further than me.
Yeah.
You know, so that's how it is.
Okay. Difficulty rating.
2.5.
Yeah.
Easy.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. For me, I gave this a 2. Yeah. It wasn't too difficult to read. I think I was reading a chapter at a time, pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. Star rating.
I didn't actually have a star rating before we came.
Okay.
I was trying to think, and I thought, let me just see where I land. Let me see where I land. But I'm landing on a 4.
Okay.
Yeah, I landed on a 4. It's a good, I'm landing on a 4. I like this book. I'd recommend this book. And it's because, again, the talent code, it doesn't actually talk about talent, which I think is a good thing. It talks about stuff that you can apply to anywhere. And it's an informative read. If you're an up-and-coming coach, I definitely think it's a book, or a teacher, or even a parent. I think it's something you should really read. Yeah,
I think it's just an interesting read, to be honest, in general. I'll give it, a strong 3.5. It was a good read. Yeah, it was a good read. I guess for me, I like to take things away that I'm going to implement in my life. And I guess the thing that I will implement is with, young people and others around me, praising effort more.
Yeah. Do you feel like you do that already? Or?
I feel like I do, but I don't know if I've been conscious of it. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, I think that's what I'm going to take away, the main thing. But the book has so much to offer. I liked it, 3.5.
Yeah.
Right, our next book, Difficult Conversations, How to Discuss What Matters Most. And, I picked this book. I'll go into more why I picked it, but difficult conversations are difficult for everyone, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to learn and join us on this, challenge, the link's in the description box. Pick this up, read it, and then you can hear our thoughts on the next episode. So difficult conversations, and that's it. But this is the power of pages.
And we review books.